Story 1. The Whisper in the Hallway. In the quiet, ramshackle outskirts of a forgotten Midwestern town, where the wind howled through cracked windows and the stars hid behind a veil of clouds, young Alex lived in a modest home that creaked with the weight of its own history. The year was 1998, and at just 8 years old, Alex was accustomed to the rhythms of a broken household. His mother, a woman of iron resolve, juggled 2 jobs to keep food on the table, her absence often filled by the warm but weary presence of Grandma Rose. Alex's younger brother Austin, 2 years his junior, slept soundly in his own room, a small sanctuary in their cramped abode. The house, though small, was a fortress against the world's cruelties, until that fateful night. It was a weekend, the air thick with the promise of summer storms. Grandma Rose sat in the living room, her knitting needles clicking in time with the muted drone of a late-night talk show. Alex, sprawled on the floor, waged imaginary wars with his Lego army, the clatter of plastic bricks earning him gentle scolds from his grandmother. "Quiet down, Alex," she'd murmur, her voice a blend of affection and exhaustion. As the clock neared 9:30 p.m., Alex's bedtime loomed, and Grandma Rose prepared to retire to their mother's bed, a ritual on nights when she stayed over. Sleep came easily to Alex, his dreams a kaleidoscope of adventure. But in the dead of night, something stirred him from slumber. A sound, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves, then sharper, a deliberate creak of the old wooden floorboards in the hallway. The house was alive with its own language, its groans and sighs familiar to Alex. But this was different. It was purposeful, a rhythm of steps that paused, then resumed, as if someone were pacing just beyond his door. Heart thudding, Alex sat up, straining to hear. The creaks grew louder, accompanied by a faint murmur, a whisper, unintelligible but urgent. His first thought was, Grandma Rose, perhaps restless or tending to a late-night need. But the whispers grew sharper, a hissed conversation with no reply, as if the speaker argued with the shadows. Curiosity warring with fear, Alex slipped from his bed, his bare feet cold against the floor. He pressed his ear to the door, the wood cool against his cheek. The whispers were clearer now, a woman's voice, low and frantic, repeating a name, Jeremy. Confusion rooted him to the spot. There was no Jeremy in their home, no one but him, Austin, and Grandma Rose. Summoning courage he didn't know he possessed, Alex cracked the door open, just enough to peer into the dimly lit hallway. What he saw stole the breath from his lungs. There, leaning against the wall, was a woman, tall, skeletal, her skin pale as moonlight. She was naked, her body a grotesque silhouette in the faint glow from a distant street lamp. Her head was bowed, pressed between her outstretched arms, her lips moving in a ceaseless whisper. The air around her seemed to shimmer with menace, as if the shadows themselves were complicit in her presence. Then, as if sensing his gaze, her head snapped toward him, her eyes wide and unblinking, pupils dilated to black voids. Her lips curled into a snarl, and the whispers became a scream. Jeremy! Alex's scream tore through the silence, a child's terror-given voice. He slammed the door shut, his hands fumbling for the lock that wasn't there. The woman pounded on the door, her fists a thunderous assault, her voice a banshee's wail. Jeremy, open the door! Alex screamed for his grandmother, his voice cracking with desperation. From the hallway came a commotion, Grandma Rose's voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the chaos. Get the hell out of here! What followed was a blur of terror. Grandma Rose, a woman in her mid-60s, transformed into a force of nature. She bellowed at the intruder, her voice a mix of fury and fear, as she wrestled with the woman. Alex, huddled against his bed, heard the scuffle, the woman's screams growing more frantic, then fading as if dragged away. Grandma Rose's voice, now strained, called to him, Keep your door locked, Alex. Then a new sound, the wail of sirens, distant but growing closer. When the police arrived, the house was eerily silent. The woman was gone, vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of her screams and the name Jeremy ringing in Alex's ears. Grandma Rose, shaken but resolute, explained to the officers that she'd forgotten to lock the back door, a simple mistake in a neighborhood where shadows hid more than just stray cats. The police found no trace of the woman, only a few scattered belongings in the yard, tattered clothes and a syringe, evidence of a mind unmoored by drugs. The incident scarred Alex deeply. For months, he couldn't sleep alone, his dreams haunted by the skeletal figure and her relentless whispers. The family moved soon after, seeking safety in a new home, but the memory of that night clung to Alex like a shadow. Years later, as an adult, he'd wonder about the woman, who she was, why she sought Jeremy, and what drove her to invade their home. The answers remained elusive, lost in the dark corners of that long-ago night. Story 2. The Shadow in the Closet. At 19, Jake was the kind of guy who laughed in the face of fear. Horror movies were his playground, jump scares his adrenaline rush. In the small college town of Ashwood, where the nights were long and the bars were loud, Jake thrived on his reputation as the fearless one. Girls loved his bravado, and he reveled in it, his confidence a shield against the mundane anxieties of young adulthood. But in the spring of 2004, a single night would shatter his illusion of invincibility. Jake's best friend Megan was his opposite, a dreamer whose mind danced on the edge of reality. She suffered from lucid dreaming and sleep paralysis, conditions that turned her nights into battlegrounds of wonder and terror. Over late-night coffee, she'd recount her experiences, visions of soaring through starlit skies or cowering from shadowy figures that pinned her to her bed. Jake listened, fascinated but skeptical. As a light sleeper, he saw no chance of such horrors invading his own mind. Still, he was there for Megan, a steady presence when her dreams turned dark. One humid April night, Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "Come over." Had another bad one. It was past midnight, but Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket and drove the short distance to her apartment, a cramped but cozy space filled with books and fairy lights. When he arrived, Megan was curled on her couch, seemingly asleep, her breathing soft and even. Relieved, Jake settled onto a stool by her makeup dresser, the window open to let in the night air. He played a game on his phone, the glow casting shadows across the room. 30 minutes passed, and Jake was about to leave when Megan awoke with a scream that froze his blood. It wasn't a scream of fear, but something primal, a muffled wail that seemed to come from deep within her. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated, her body trembling as if seized by an invisible force. Jake rushed to her side, his voice urgent. "Megan, are you okay?" Was it a dream? She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on something beyond him, her tremors growing violent. Panicked, Jake held her, trying to anchor her to reality. He'd heard her describe sleep paralysis before, moments when her body was locked, her mind trapped in a nightmare. He murmured reassurances, his hands gentle but firm. After what felt like an eternity, her shaking subsided, and she slumped against him, exhausted but lucid. "I'm okay," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Relieved, Jake stayed a few minutes longer, ensuring she was calm before heading home. It was nearly 1 a.m., and the night felt heavier than before. As Jake pulled into his driveway, his phone lit up with another text from Megan. "The hallucinations won't stop." His heart sank. He called her, but she didn't answer. Text went unread. Fear gnawed at him. What if this was more than a dream? Without hesitation, he turned his car around and sped back to her apartment, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When he arrived, the sight that greeted him was a nightmare come to life. Red and blue lights pulsed across Megan's front porch, police cars lining the street. Jake's stomach churned as he sprinted toward the house, his shouts drowned out by the chaos. Megan stood on the lawn speaking to an officer, her face pale but composed. When she saw Jake, she broke away, her eyes wide with a mix of relief and horror. The officer led them to a quiet corner, and Megan's story unfolded like a twisted fairy tale. That night, when Jake had first arrived, she hadn't been asleep. She'd been frozen, caught in what she thought was another sleep paralysis episode. But it wasn't a hallucination. A man, tall, gaunt, with wild eyes and a kitchen knife clutched in his hand, had been in her room, creeping toward her bed. Megan, paralyzed by fear, had pretended to sleep, praying he wouldn't notice her. When Jake entered, his presence spooked the intruder, who slipped into the closet. the knife glinting in the dim light. Jake's arrival had saved her. The man, a homeless drifter known to the police, had been watching Megan's apartment for days, his intentions unclear, but undeniably sinister. When Jake left, Megan, trembling but resolute, had called 911. The police arrived just in time, apprehending the man as he tried to flee. They found the knife, along with a bag of stolen trinkets, evidence of his prowling. Jake was shaken to his core. The fearless boy who laughed at horror movies now saw the world differently. He'd been inches from a killer, oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. Megan moved soon after, seeking safety in a new town. But she and Jake remained close, bound by the night they'd survived. For Jake, the experience was a humbling reminder that true terror didn't need jump scares. It waited in the quiet moments, in the spaces between breaths. Story 3. The Trap at Midnight Chicago, 2015. The city pulsed with life, its skyline a glittering promise of opportunity. For Ethan, a 22-year-old fresh out of college, it was a new beginning. He'd moved into a 3-bedroom apartment on the south side, near the University of Illinois, a vibrant neighborhood where students and young professionals mingled. His roommates, Mike and Tom, were an easy fit. Mike, a childhood friend, was a laid-back stoner with a side hustle dealing weed. Tom, Mike's buddy, was a quiet guy who spent most nights at his girlfriend's place. The apartment was a haven, a place to crash after long days and longer nights. One chilly October evening, Ethan met friends at a dive bar in the city's heart, the kind of place where the jukebox played Springsteen and the beer was cheap. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, and by 1 a.m., Ethan was pleasantly buzzed, his cheeks flushed from whiskey and good company. He hailed a cab, the city lights blurring past as he headed home, eager for the comfort of his bed. Stepping into the apartment, Ethan noticed the quiet. Tom's door was open, his room empty, a sign he was at his girlfriend's. Mike's door was closed, the flicker of his TV seeping under the crack. Ethan shuffled to his room, kicked off his shoes and flipped on the TV, the drone of a late-night sitcom lulling him toward sleep. Then a sharp sound cut through the haze, the doorbell, insistent and out of place at 1:30 a.m. Ethan blinked, groggy, hoping it was a mistake. But it rang again, then a third time, each chime more urgent. Irritation flared. Mike's weed business often brought late-night visitors, customers too stoned to respect normal hours. Ethan dragged himself to the intercom, his voice rough. "Who's there?" A girl's voice crackled through the speaker, soft but clear. "It's Emma. I'm here to see Mike." Ethan sighed, assuming she was one of Mike's clients, or maybe a hookup. Mike's social life was a revolving door of strangers, and Ethan had learned to roll with it. He slipped on his sneakers and headed downstairs, the glass door to the building revealing a young woman, blonde, college-age, with glasses and a nervous smile. She looked harmless, even charming, and Ethan's guard slipped. He cracked the door open, the cold night air brushing his face. "Hey, Mike's upstairs. Follow me." Emma nodded, her smile tight, and grabbed the door as Ethan turned to lead the way. But as he climbed the stairs, a prickle of unease ran down his spine. The soft thud of her footsteps didn't follow. Glancing back, he saw her still at the door, holding it open, her gaze fixed to the side as if waiting for someone. Dread washed over him, cold and suffocating. Before he could react, the door swung wide and heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. Ethan turned, his heart lurching as a man appeared. A tall, wiry figure with sunken eyes and greasy hair spilling over his shoulders. His black tank top revealed arms etched with crude tattoos, and in his right hand, he clutched a lead pipe, its dull gleam promising violence. Panic surged through Ethan. He sprinted up the stairs, his breath ragged, the man's footsteps a relentless drumbeat behind him. Reaching the apartment, Ethan slammed the door shut, his fingers fumbling with the lock. The man reached the door, the pipe crashing against it with a force that rattled the frame. "Open the damn door!" he roared, his voice raw with rage. Ethan backed away, his pulse thundering, as the man struck the door again and again, each blow a promise of what awaited if he broke through. Then as suddenly as it began, the assault stopped. Footsteps retreated, fading down the stairs. Ethan stood frozen, his body trembling, until silence reclaimed the night. When he finally mustered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty, the glass door downstairs swinging in the wind. Mike, roused by the noise, emerged from his room, bleary-eyed and confused. Ethan recounted the ordeal, his voice shaking. Mike admitted he'd buzzed Emma up earlier that day, mistaking her for a friend of Ethan's. She'd come to the apartment, looking for someone named Tim, and left quickly, her behavior odd. Ethan's theory took shape. Emma and her accomplice had targeted the apartment, perhaps for Mike's cash or drugs, but their first attempt failed when Mike let her up alone. The second try, with Ethan as the unwitting gatekeeper, nearly succeeded. The police arrived, taking statements and searching the area, but Emma and the man were gone, swallowed by the city's underbelly. Ethan and Mike never saw them again, but the incident left its mark. Ethan became vigilant, checking locks and questioning strangers. The apartment, once a haven, now felt like a trap waiting to spring. For Ethan, the city's pulse was no longer a promise, but a warning, a reminder that danger lurked in the spaces between trust and suspicion. Story 4: The Storm's Unwelcome Guest. In the summer of 2021, 25-year-old Sarah found herself alone in her family's sprawling suburban home, a two-story relic of happier times. Her parents were halfway across the Atlantic, savoring a rare vacation in France, leaving Sarah to navigate the quiet expanse of the house. It was June 15th, and the day had been a grueling marathon, 3 morning exams followed by a bruising volleyball match. By evening, exhaustion clung to her like a second skin, the heat of the day pressing against her, even in her tank top and shorts. The house was stifling, the air thick with humidity. Desperate for relief, Sarah flung open every window, the living room and bedroom shutters welcoming a faint breeze. She ate dinner in her room, scrolling through social media, her eyelids heavy. Without realizing it, she collapsed into bed, the open windows forgotten, the world fading into the soft hum of crickets. She awoke at 3 a.m. to chaos. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and a cold draft swept through the room, carrying the scent of rain. The shutters, left open, banged against the walls, their rhythm erratic in the rising wind. Groggy, Sarah reached for her lamp, but it refused to light. Using her phone's flashlight, she checked the plug. Nothing was amiss. A glance outside revealed a sky bruised with storm clouds, the streetlights dark. A blackout, she realized, her mind slow to catch up. Phone in hand, Sarah stumbled through the house, closing windows to keep the coming rain at bay. But at the last window in the living room, she froze. The mosquito net was lifted, its edge caught on the frame, a detail that didn't sit right. She was certain she hadn't left it that way. Unease prickled her skin, and she swung her flashlight around the room, searching for signs of disturbance. The furniture was untouched, the drawers closed, the decor undisturbed. Outside, trees swayed in the wind, their branches clawing at the sky, but nothing seemed out of place. Shaking off her paranoia, Sarah closed the shutters and turned back toward her room, eager to escape the storm's ominous prelude. But as she passed the staircase to the attic, a flash of light stopped her cold. It was brief but bright, spilling from the attic's glass windows. She waited for thunder, her breath held, but the night remained silent. Lightning that close should have roared, unless it wasn't lightning at all. Fear coiled in her gut. The lifted mosquito net, the silent flash, it all pointed to a chilling possibility. Someone was in the house. Her mind raced, conjuring images of an intruder, their intentions unknown. She gripped her phone tighter, its light a fragile shield against the dark. Then a new sound, a faint twist of a doorknob coming from the front door. Through the glass pane, she saw a shadowy figure, its outline distorted by the storm's chaos. There were 2 of them, one upstairs, one outside. Terror threatened to paralyze her, but Sarah forced herself to move. She crept toward the basement stairs, the garage her only hope of escape. Dialing 911, she whispered her plight to the operator, her voice barely audible. "There's someone in my house. Please hurry." The operator's calm voice promised help within 10 minutes, urging her to lock herself in a safe room. But the basement had no signal, and as Sarah descended, her phone's battery icon blinked red. a final warning. In the basement, she hesitated. An emergency flashlight was somewhere in the clutter, but the garage door was so close, freedom within reach. She moved toward it, her heart pounding, when a primal instinct screamed at her to stop. She swung her phone's light toward her car, parked in the garage, and there, pressed against the rearview mirror, was a face. A man's face. Grotesque and leering, his eyes white and unblinking, his grin a slash of yellowed teeth. He raised a filthy hand, waving slowly, as if beckoning her closer. Sarah's phone died, plunging her into darkness. The car door creaked open, and her scream shattered the silence, raw and desperate. Blindly, she fumbled for the garage door, her fingers finding the lock. She burst outside, the rain soaking her as she scrambled up the driveway, vaulting over the gate. She ran to her neighbor's house, pounding on their door, her screams incoherent but urgent. They emerged shocked as Sarah babbled about the intruders. Sirens wailed and police cars screeched to a halt. Sarah, soaked and trembling, recounted the nightmare to an officer, her words tumbling over each other. 4 officers stormed the house, guns drawn, but found it empty. The intruders had fled, taking a few valuable antiques but leaving no trace of their identities. The police searched the neighborhood, but the storm had washed away any clues. Sarah spent the night at her neighbor's, unable to face the house. At dawn, she returned, her nerves frayed, to gather her things. As she made her bed, a small piece of paper slipped from the sheets. Her blood ran cold as she read the scrawled words, "Bye-bye, beauty. You look cute when you sleep." The note was a violation, a reminder that the intruders had been in her room, watching her as she slept, their presence a stain on the safety she'd once taken for granted. The experience changed Sarah. She moved out soon after, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The house, once a home, became a monument to her fear, its shadows hiding secrets she'd never unravel. The note remained, tucked away in a drawer, a chilling memento of the night the storm brought more than rain.